What's up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us once again on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon in the suburbs of Philly, but wherever you are, hello to you. Yes, we are home once again as some exciting news to announce shortly. I'm not going to break the news just yet, but exciting news here at the PHLY network and, of course, via ALLCITY as well. So I'm sure that news is going to drop in a couple of hours. So I'm not going to be the one to do it, because A, it's not my news to tell, and B, the suspense will be fun. But that should drop in about an hour or two, I think, and we'll have all of those details for you, maybe on the PHLY Eagles podcast. We'll see. You got to tune in for that. But hello, everybody. Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast as the Phillies with a very comfortable win last night. John Marks and I talked about it on the morning show today, that this one felt pretty routine, and it wasn't for the most part. And maybe routine is not the right word, but maybe it was more along the lines of just it was a baseball game yesterday. And that sounds stupid. Of course, it was a baseball game, but there wasn't any like dramatics. Sunday was very dramatic. There was the rally by the Phillies offense late. There was the extra inning game. There was the Diamondbacks scoring 3 runs. The Phillies stranding the tying run on base with the winning run at the plate. This one was much more low-key. It was low stress. And I think it was due in part to a couple of different things. First and foremost, Zack Wheeler was excellent again. We're going to talk about Zack Wheeler a little bit later in the show. But when Zack Wheeler's on the mound, there's just this cool, calm composure to him that puts you as a Phillies fan and puts me as a Phillies fan at ease for whatever reason. It's just a collective, like, deep sigh of relief when Zack Wheeler's on the mound. But the other thing, too, was that ballpark is weird, man. Listen, it's a minor league ballpark. The situation is obviously not the most pleasant one. Obviously, there was catastrophic destruction that led to Tropicana Field being unusable this year because of the damage that it took because of the hurricane. But the field, George Steinbrenner Field, the ballpark is obviously a minor league field. And they've done a nice job of adding some renovations and adding some extra stuff to it to make it a viable major league stadium. But it's a minor league ballpark. It's tight dimensions. It's a smaller ballpark. And I think the reason I bring that up was because last night there was just this kind of like hum, right? And there was a point in the game where it became kind of a boring game. Zack Wheeler was pitching well. The Rays bullpen had stemmed the tides a little bit of Rasmussen's struggles early, and it kind of became a little bit of a boring baseball game. And there was this weird, just like deadness to the stadium. It was a lot of Phillies fans. You could hear Phillies chants. You could hear Eagles chants. Kyle Schwarber was getting chants. Zack Wheeler was getting chants. Alec Bohm was getting chants. We'll talk more about him in just a little bit. But it definitely had a home away from home feel, which makes sense considering there are a lot of Philadelphia transplants in the Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete area. And in a smaller ballpark where there was not a lot of fans, I think there was about 10,000 fans there yesterday, those type of things tend to bleed through the broadcast. And so it had a little bit of a like hum to it last night, but there wasn't a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement. And you could tell there was a lot of Phillies fans there, at least percentage-wise, based on the number of fans that are in the ballpark. Because again, it's a minor league ballpark. The Phillies play there in spring training when they go on the road and play the Yankees in spring training. So it was kind of a dead game yesterday, but the Phillies win 8-4 and take it pretty convincingly. Nick Castellanos finishes a triple shy of the cycle. Alec Bohm hits his first home run in what feels like forever. Kyle Schwarber drives in a pair of runs and hits his 12th home run of the year. And that is where we're going to start today's show, because, my friends, I think we've come to this conclusion already, but if you haven't, it becomes more and more and more apparent as the season unfolds and as Kyle Schwarber continues his torrid start to the season. The Phillies absolutely cannot let Kyle Schwarber walk away in free agency this offseason. I think it's a non-negotiable at this point. Kyle Schwarber is 32 years old. He is becoming a more and more and more complete hitter as the season goes on and as his career goes on. Kyle Schwarber is not just your prototypical power-hitting, high strikeout, cleanup hitter type guy anymore, right? When I think of guys like Mark Reynolds, and I think of Chris Davis, and I think of Adam Dunn, Kyle Schwarber was one of those guys for a long time. And in fact, Kyle Schwarber was one of those guys when the Phillies signed him back in 2022. But the complete player that Kyle Schwarber has become over the last couple of seasons, last year and into the bulk of the beginning of this season specifically, has led me to the conclusion that if the Phillies allow Kyle Schwarber to walk in free agency this offseason, not only would it be an egregious decision, it would hurt this team. Kyle Schwarber has been the catalyst for the Phillies for the last 2 seasons now. Now, I will say this. I have argued, you've heard me say it many times, that at the beginning of the year, Kyle Schwarber should have remained in the leadoff spot. There was numeric backing to that. There was a lot of stats that back it up. There was just the air of, either take the life out of a ballpark in the top of the first or give life to Citizens Bank Park in the bottom of the first when Kyle Schwarber leads the game off with a home run, which he broke the record last year for most leadoff home runs in a single season. But I digress with that conversation because at this point, it feels like a buried conversation, and maybe rightfully so. When there's a righty on the mound, Bryson Stott leads off. When there's a lefty on the mound, Trey Turner leads off. And Kyle Schwarber has been cemented as the 4th hitter in this lineup, as the team's cleanup hitter. And why do they do that? Well, it's because Kyle Schwarber has been so good against left-handed pitching. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Last night, Kyle Schwarber hit his MLB lead tying. Now, that sounds weird, but he's now tied for the Major League Baseball lead with 12 home runs on the season. The 2 guys that he's tied with, Aaron Judge, who has been the hottest hitter on planet Earth the last, 162 game stretch, legitimately has been unbelievably good and is on Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Barry Bonds type run over the last 162 games. And Cal Raleigh, who is maybe one of the most underrated power hitters in all of baseball. And maybe that's because he plays in Seattle. Maybe that's because the Mariners' offense last year was really, really bad. And that's a team that has been much better this year offensively. And they look like the team they should have been last year. But Cal Raleigh is the other guy with 12 home runs. Kyle Schwarber hit a home run last night, his 12th, drove in 2 runs, his 27th and his 28th game. So what I decided to do was let's assume that Kyle Schwarber stays healthy, which hasn't been a problem for him so far in his Phillies tenure. He's been a pretty much staple in the Phillies lineup, whether it's been at most of the time playing as the DH, couple of times here and there being their left fielder. Getting him out of the outfield, I think, was a big decision for the team, and it was the right decision for the team. But let's assume he stays healthy and plays about 155 games. Now, where did I get 155 games from? Since he's come to Philly, that's his pace as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. 150 his first year, 160 his second year, 155 his third year. So 155 games is the average in which Kyle Schwarber has played over his first 3 seasons. If you take the numbers that he has so far this year, his 12 home runs and his 28 RBIs, and you pace those out over 155 games, his season pace, he's on pace for over 50 home runs and 124 RBI. Now, listen, I don't know if he does that for the entirety of the season. It's a pretty torrid stretch that he's been on. To go 50 and 120 plus would be not only the best season of Kyle Schwarber's Phillies tenure, but it probably would be the best season of Kyle Schwarber's career. He's had some really, really good seasons over the course of his career, but his career high in home runs is 47, which was his second year as a Philly. He's set to be on pace to break that and maybe go over 50 for the first time in his career. His career high in RBI, he's done each of the last 2 years, is 104. Now, again, you could have the conversation about would he have more if he wasn't hitting in the leadoff spot for a bulk of the last 2 seasons? Would he have more if he was the Phillies' 4 hitter? And maybe the answer to that question is yes, but he's on pace for 124, which is 20 more, obviously, than his career high. What Kyle Schwarber has done over the first 35 games of the season has been nothing short of incredible. Whether he gets to that trajectory or not, it has been a damn good start to the year for Kyle Schwarber. But to me, I think what makes Kyle Schwarber so special this year and what he started to do last year, but he's really tacked on this season so far, what makes him a more dangerous hitter, a more complete hitter, is the fact that he has made himself a much more well-rounded hitter over the last 2 seasons. Now, listen, The strikeout rates for Kyle Schwarber are always going to be high. It kind of is what it is. Last year, Kyle Schwarber struck out 197 times, which is actually the fewest of his 3 seasons as a member of the Phillies. He was 200, 215, and then 197 last season. But this year, he's actually on pace for his lowest strikeout total as a Philly if he continues the trajectory that he's on. And it's really not particularly close. He's actually on pace for only about 155 strikeouts, which would be 42 less than any other season that he's posted. So he's swinging and missing less this year than he has in each of the first 3 seasons, specifically swinging and missing less with 2 strikes. Here are his whiff rate percentiles over the first 3 seasons. He was in the 20th percentile in year 1, and then last year he was in the 13th, and his worst year 2 years ago in terms of whiff rate percentiles was in the 11th in the 2023 season. This year, he's up to the 22nd percentile. Yes, he's still swinging and missing a decent bit, but he's moving in the right direction compared to the first 3 seasons. But it's really the K rate and the K rate percentile that jumps out to you as to why Kyle Schwarber has been so good to begin the season this year so far, and it's why he's striking out at a significantly better pace. First year, 8th percentile. Second year, 12th percentile. Third year, 13th percentile. This year, 51st percentile. So he's at approximately league average in terms of K rate for the 2025 season. And I think that's all you can ask for from Kyle Schwarber, from a guy who over the course of his career has struck out over 1,300 times in 11 seasons. That's really all I can ask for Kyle Schwarber, for a guy who's gone over 200 twice and was on the doorstep of 200 last season. He's now on pace to strike out just over 150 times this year. So his K rate has gone in the right direction this season, and the percentile has really jumped out. Like, it's become to a point where he's an entirely different hitter than he was 2 seasons ago. He started it this year or last year and has really taken it to the next level this year. And I think that plays in part due to the one thing that he's been really good at, other than, of course, hitting home runs. The one thing that he's been really good at over the course of his career is his command of the strike zone. It's just unbelievable how good he is, how good his eye is at the plate, and his command at the strike zone is. I almost feel like it's become a running joke where to say, if Kyle Schwarber doesn't think it a strike, the umpire might not call it. Now, of course, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but he's been that good with plate discipline and selectivity at the plate throughout the course of his career, but over the last 2 years has been excellent. He's at an almost 18% walk rate this year, which for the 4th consecutive year puts him in the 94th percentile or better as a member of the Phillies. He's walking at a higher rate. He's striking out less. His plate discipline is unbelievable. And all of those things really kind of play into the hitter that Kyle Schwarber has become. It's not just home run or bust for Kyle Schwarber anymore, which Kyle Schwarber for a long time had a home run or walk rate of almost 20%, which means that any plate appearance that Kyle Schwarber was in had a 1 out of 5 chance of ending in either a walk or a home run, which is not a bad thing at all. It's productivity for a guy who you're expecting productivity from. But the player that he's become, the well-rounded catalyst that Kyle Schwarber has become, has really taken off in the last, 2024 and in the first 35 games of 2025. But the main conversation point of today, and all of that is important, but I think the reason that he's become the complete hitter that he has is twofold. I think it's his ability to hit left-handed pitching and his ability to hit with 2 strikes this season. So let's start with the left-handed pitching, because that's something that's been well documented, especially over the last 2 seasons. Kyle Schwarber is a career .225 hitter against left-handed pitching. He has 61 home runs, which in comparison to the near 200 or to the over 200 that he has against right-handed pitching, it's a pretty stark contrast. He has 61 home runs, but he's also struck out over 400 times, which again, you say is 1,300 strikeouts, but he's faced lefties less in the course of his career than he has right-handed pitching. He also has an 83 OPS plus in the course of his career against left-handed pitching. 100 is baseline. 100 is what the league considers average. He's 17 points below league average over the course of his career in terms of OPS plus. Last year is when the trajectory really started for him as a lefty hitter against left-handed pitching, being successful. He hit 300 last year against lefties with a 400 OBP and a 112 OPS plus. So you saw last year was when he really started to become a more well-rounded hitter, and his splits actually became inverse as the season went on. And he was so darn good against lefties last season that you went, wait, where did this come from? And this year he's picked up right where he's left off. He's hitting 304 against lefties this year so far. He has 14 hits against left-handed pitching. 8 of them are extra base hits. His OPS this year against lefties is 1.2, and his OPS plus is 136. He's now 36 points this season above league average against left-handed pitching. And that does not take into account same side, like lefty-lefty or righty-lefty. That just says every hitter's OPS plus in the entirety of Major League Baseball through the first 35 games. What do we get that average out to? And of course, it's a baseline of 100. He's 36 points above league average in OPS plus against left-handed pitching. He's basically become like lefty proof. And I think that's one of the big reasons as to why Kyle Schwarber can be in the 4-hole now and doesn't necessarily have to be your leadoff hitter anymore, because he has the ability to protect Bryce Harper, which is really something that Harper's never had over the tenure of his time as a Philly here. They've tried JT Realmuto. They had Rhys Hoskins for a while, who was probably the best 4-hole protector for Bryce Harper in the 3 spot. But those guys, Harper hit 4th a little bit in the World Series run, and Hoskins missed, a lot of time in that year. And so they were having JT hit 3rd and Harper hit 4th. It was kind of a mix and match of who was going to hit 3rd and who was going to hit 4th. But this is really the protection that Bryce Harper has needed. Now, Bryce Harper has struggled. We've talked about that for a while, that Bryce Harper has struggled this year so far numerically, especially in the month of April. He hit just 234 in the month of April, and, that needs to improve. There's no question about it. But Kyle Schwarber has been able to protect Harper in the 3-hole hitting 4th because he is lefty proof. The Phillies and Rob Thompson are now not worried about having consecutive left-handed hitters, especially considering these are probably your 2 best hitters against left-handed pitching. So his ability to hit left-handed pitching has been so important to this team. The second is his ability to hit with 2 strikes. And now I'm going to try to sell you on numbers that sound terrible. And that doesn't seem like there's a vote of confidence there. But I'm going to try to sell you on numbers that seem like on the onset to be terrible. Kyle Schwarber is a career 143 hitter with 2 strikes, and his slugging is 288. Now, you're going to say that's terrible, right? But Major League Baseball average with 2 strikes is 183. And that's not this year. That's not this decade. That's not this millennium. That's since 1988, when 2-strike hits started being tracked routinely. Major League Baseball as a collective hit 183. The only player that was 2-strike proof over that time frame was Tony Gwynn, who hit over 300 with 2 strikes, which just goes to show you how ridiculous of a hitter Tony Gwynn was over the course of his career. But Kyle Schwarber is a career 143 hitter with 2 strikes. This year, however, he's almost 50 points better than that. Now, and this is where I say I'm going to sell you on numbers that don't seem great. He's hitting 191 with 2 strikes, which, again, is below 200, but it's above league average for the last, 35 years of collection of data. He's above league average at 191. But the more important thing is his slugging with 2 strikes this year is 427. He's got 13 hits with 2 strikes, 6 extra base hits, including 5 of which are home runs. He's driven in 13 runs with 2 strikes, and he's walked 19 times. The season OPS plus, and I've given you OPS plus a lot today, the season OPS plus with 2 strikes is 69, which is more than double his career average with 2 strikes of 33. So to wrap this whole conversation up and to tell you why I think it's so important that he's hitting with 2 strikes this year, I'm going to put this into a little bit of further perspective. I'm going to give you 2 names. 2 names that I think are the best hitters in baseball this season. Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. Those 2 guys, to me, I think are the best hitters in baseball this season so far. Bobby Witt Jr. has a ridiculous 23 2-strike hits already this year. Aaron Judge has 18. And so to say that Kyle Schwarber is only 5 off the pace of Aaron Judge, who has been one of the best hitters in baseball this year, and Bobby Witt's on a different trajectory in terms of two-strike hitting. But to say that those two guys are within the realm of what Kyle Schwarber's done this year in terms of hitting with 2 strikes, I think it shows an importance to how good he has been. Again, his average is 50 points higher this year than it has been throughout the course of his career when he gets with 2 strikes. And to wrap up this whole conversation, I talked a lot about how good Kyle Schwarber's been this year. I'm going to wrap this thing up by saying this. And I said it at the beginning. I'm going to say it again. It would be malpractice for the Phillies to let Kyle Schwarber walk this offseason. There's been talks about a contract extension for a long time now. But the question becomes, how much is it going to cost them? I think it's going to cost a lot. More than what he's getting this year. Kyle Schwarber signed for 4 years and just under $80 million. About 19 and some change this season. The money that it's going to cost Kyle Schwarber to keep Kyle Schwarber, I think is going to be more important than what the years are. Because I think Kyle Schwarber probably gets either a 3 or a 4-year deal. And it'll be his last substantial contract. But I was looking back on some of the DHs, and I use DHs air quotes because interchangeable with some of the outfielders and first basemen that signed big deals over the last couple of years. And Shohei Ohtani, of course, is off the table, 2-way player, one of the best hitters in baseball, not in the same conversation. It was hard to find a balance of this guy's a primary DH and how much money is he making. And I was thinking about, I looked at Teoscar Hernandez, who got 3 for 66. Schwarber's going to get more than that. And Hernandez plays in the field more consistently, much more consistently than Kyle Schwarber does. I was looking at Jock Peterson. He didn't get a ton of money. Schwarber's going to get a ridiculous amount of money compared to what Jock Peterson got. The money is going to be substantial. It's going to be more than $80 million, even if it's not 4 years. I think you're probably closing in on somewhere between $90 and $100 million for 3 seasons. If they go a 4th, you might end up seeing the AAV come down a little bit to get that 4th year. But Kyle Schwarber is going to make a ton of money this offseason. And I think the Phillies, even though they have to figure out the balance of the money that's coming off the books between him and JT Realmuto and Ranger Suarez and the guys that are still arbitration eligible, the Phillies are going to have to balance that money versus are they going to call up guys like Otto Kemp or Justin Crawford or Andrew Painter? That's how they balance cheap versus expensive. The Phillies are going to have to pay up for Kyle Schwarber. And if they don't, I think it would be a very, very silly, foolish endeavor to not do that. All right, that's enough Kyle Schwarber talk for today. We're going to pause for just a moment. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what Zack Wheeler did yesterday. We'll talk about Bohm and Castellanos as well. And then we, of course, have to give you our Ace Hardware temp check. Who's heating up or who's cooling down? I'm going to give you a player that might surprise you a little bit in who's heating up. But we'll do that on the other side after we tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. And speaking about Ace Hardware Temp Check, we're going to tell you about that in just a moment. But why don't we talk about Ace Hardware Home Services for just a second? You know that Ace is the place with the helpful hardware folks, but did you know they're also the place with the helpful hardware home service team? If you've got a leaky pipe, you've got an air conditioning issue, don't put your air conditioning issues off any further. It's getting warm. It's getting consistently warm. Today's a little bit cooler, but you don't want to wait until June or July when you need that AC on full blast and it's just blowing out hot air. So get that fixed in a timely manner. If you've got a faucet you said you were going to fix last fall and haven't done it yet, whatever the case may be, it's plumbing, it's heating, it's cooling. They've got the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. And they're bringing the helpful home, that helpful that you love from the store, can now come right to your front door. So visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project today. All right, one of our newest friends and sponsors here at PHLY is somebody that I love their work, and it is the art of words. Listen, a picture is said to be worth 1,000 words, and this local artist proves it. Each piece is made entirely from handwritten words, like eagles, like every Eagle ever forming the link, or every Philly ever forming Citizens Bank Park. And before I go any further, this is a testament to how good Art of Words is and how awesome they've been for a really long time. Sometimes, you do ad reads and you go, does the host actually endorse this product? This is Brad Lidge, and this is every game of the 2008 Phillies season. Every result, wins and losses, etched into a picture of Brad Lidge in exuberation down on his knees after winning the 2008 World Series. So do I endorse Art of Words? 100%. This has been hanging in my childhood bedroom for over a decade now because I love the work that Art of Words does. But it's not just Phillies products. You can get incredible, unforgettable gifts for all of your sports fans as a housewarming gift. You've got Mother's Day and Father's Day coming up. Mother's Day this weekend, Father's Day next month. Any occasion is worth the Art of Words because as you can see by that Brad Lidge poster, they do an awesome job. Now, Art of Words started selling art in the K-Lot and Rice's Flea Mart and credits Phillies fans for launching the career. You're available in dozens of teams and dozens of cities. There is something available for everybody. Check it out at artofwords.com. That's artofwords.com and use the code PHLY at checkout for 15% off your purchases. And again, I can't say enough good things about the work that Art of Words has done because, again, I've had this thing for 10 years now. And I don't know, my mom bought it. I don't know where she bought it for me over a decade ago, but now you can get them pretty much anywhere, including at artofwords.com. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast here. Tyler Zulli with you. And, of course, the PHLY podcast, as always, is brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Hello to Mopar, Futz, K-Red, Jim Cook, our resident White Sox fan, checked in for a moment. Ray Schumacher, and everybody, Pat Ryan, who's been in the chat so far. Appreciate you all. Philly sports enjoyer, you are all the absolute best. So Jim Cook, I don't think Jim's here anymore. I think Jim checked out. But I don't know, did any of you see the way that the White Sox game ended yesterday? Only the White Sox, and probably the Rockies this year, because the Rockies suck worse than the White Sox do. But the way that the White Sox game ended earlier this week, where they were up 3-2 on the Kansas City Royals, and routine pop-up. I mean, you talk about routine. This is like can of corn, little league type of pop-up. Gets hit to the second baseman, and it just gets bonked. And when I mean bonked, it went literally off the second baseman's head. And it rolled into right field, and the White Sox ended up with runners on second and third, at first and second. And by the way, the runner at first, who was, of course, doing what they're supposed to do and really not lingering too far off the bag because the expectation was that the ball should have been caught, ends up having to scamper to second. Ball goes into right field. A good throw gets the runner at second. Couldn't even manage that. Ball sails the shortstop at second base. White Sox end up losing the game. And it's a comedy of errors when you watch the White Sox. And I understand that the White Sox had to really break this thing down to the studs and destroy everything to rebuild. Maybe it didn't have to go this far. And help is on the way, White Sox fans, right? They seem to have a good foundation. Edgar Caro got called up the other day, the catcher, who was awesome. They acquired Kyle Teal, who I'm super high on from the Red Sox in the Garrett Crochet trade this offseason. Montgomery will be available shortly. They've got a good base, and I think that they'll be fine eventually. But the White Sox had to really, really tear this thing down to if it's not if a player wasn't, attached to the floor, as Jamie Lynch likes to say, the old Christmas Vacation line about waking up with your head sewn to the carpet. That's kind of what it was for the White Sox. And the funny thing is, they're probably not even the worst team in baseball this year because the Rockies are brutally bad. Yes, K-Red, incredible gif. And Futch, you are correct. If you don't like defense, if you like defense, you're not going to want to watch the White Sox because they are a routinely awful team. All right, let's talk a little bit about last night's game. I talked a lot about Kyle Schwarber, and rightfully so. Kyle Schwarber has been excellent, but there was a lot more to get into yesterday, and I want to start with Zack Wheeler in yesterday's game. And I said at the top of the show, there felt like there was a calm. There was a just air of everything's fine. And you feel that way, I think, more times than not when Zack Wheeler pitches because he is a consummate, not just a consummate pro, he's a consummate ace. And the Phillies last night, we're going to ask for some depth, some length out of Zack Wheeler's start because the bullpen had been used quite a bit over the last 2 weeks or so. And there was an 11-9 game. Jose Alvarado had to throw a lot of pitches. Matt Strahm last night ended up having to throw a lot of pitches, which was unfortunate. But the Phillies end up, clamping things down in the ninth and winning the game. And Zack Wheeler was going to be tasked with probably getting into, if not pitching through the seventh. And that's exactly what he did. And the reality was last night, I think Zack Wheeler was probably going to head back out for the 8th inning if it wasn't for the offensive outburst in the top of the 8th that gave the Phillies a much larger lead than what they had. And Zack Wheeler sat around for a lot of time in the top of the 8th because he was only at 84 pitches. He was efficient. He was in command. He was sharp. He was just everything that you ask Zack Wheeler to be over the tenure of Zack Wheeler's time here as a Philly. Over his last 5 starts, Zack Wheeler has a 2.7 ERA. His ERA is down to 3.3, which almost feels high for how good Zack Wheeler has been. But remember, got roughed up a little bit in the Atlanta start. And then I think it might have been the Cardinals start the next game where he struggled a little bit. Yeah, gave up 4 runs in 6 innings against the Cardinals. Wasn't particularly sharp in that game either. So he gave up 9 runs in the course of 11 1/3 innings pitched. Outside of that, he has given up 9 runs in 32 innings pitched, almost 33 innings pitched. Zack Wheeler has just been as pro as you can possibly get. And that's exactly what you expect from Zack Wheeler. And that's why that calming factor comes into play when Zack Wheeler takes the mound. He now has, trying to do the math really quickly, 58 strikeouts this season in 45 innings pitched. Heading into the start against the Nationals, he was second in strikeouts in baseball, only to Mackenzie Gore. Now, if you go to the strikeout leader total, that 58, and again, excuse me, trying to do this on the fly, that 58 puts him at, let's do the math real quick. Math is hard. Puts him at, is 66 now, 58 plus the 8, puts him at second still. 66 strikeouts to Mackenzie Gore's 68. He's 9 better than the next best starters in Cole Reagans, who's been so good this year, especially multiple 10 strikeout games, and Carlos Rodon from the Yankees, who also has 57. Crochet and Sale at 56. Logan, bunch of guys, at 55, 56. But the point is, Zack Wheeler has been incredible outside of those 2 starts against the Braves and the Cardinals, and there is just a pro effect to Zack Wheeler. And the one thing last night, outside of the efficiency, which, you kind of come to expect with Zack Wheeler when he takes the mound. But the one thing last night, and I tweeted this from the PHLY Phillies account, like in the 3rd inning, and it was true for a majority of the start. When Zack Wheeler is just in a fastball groove, sometimes that's when Zack Wheeler is at his best. Listen, he throws 6 pitches, and most of them are really good. Sweepers plus, curveballs plus. Splitter has gone from non-existent to pretty good to one of his best pitches in just a 2-year span. Cutter is good. I think there's some times where it's a little bit flat, but the cutter is good more times than not. But when he's at his best pitch is his fastball. And there's no question about it. That is his absolute best pitch. And last night, he threw the fastball 42 times out of 84 pitches, exactly 50% of the time. And the reason behind that was because he faced a lot of lefties, and he doesn't mind throwing it to either hitter, right? Either side. It's his primary pitch. He's going to throw it more than any other pitch. But last night, he was able to hone in on a bunch of lefties who the Rays are a light hitting team. They have a couple of guys with some pop. Yandy Diaz has pop. Jonathan Aranda has pop, but it is a light hitting team. And we talked about that in the preview. It's a team that, is towards the bottom in terms of batting average and slug and things like that. They're a team that likes to take the extra base. They steal a lot of bags. They're good on the bases, but they don't get on base as much as they would like. And Zack Wheeler faced a lot of lefties who he was able to get ahead in the count and stay ahead in the count because of his fastball last night. He touched 98 yesterday. They say 97.7. The gun told you 98. Maybe they rounded up a little bit, but his fastball was routinely in almost at 96. He was up about 0.4 of a mile per hour on average from his year-to-year average. And I think he was just in a fastball groove yesterday where he was pumping fastball. He got 9 whiffs on the 20 swings, 45% whiff on the 20 swings. He got 18 whiffs and caught lookings in terms of like called strikes. 43% of those pitches were either whiffs or called strikes. He was of his 42 were those 2 things. He was just dialed in with the fastball yesterday. He threw it at 67% for what was perceived strike. He was in the zone at 67%. He was he didn't get a lot of out of the zone contact, a lot of chase, if you will, because he was in the zone so much. There was an at bat yesterday where he went strike one at the knees on the outer edge to a lefty. He went strike one, boom, painted it. JT set up. It was a strike. It was exactly where JT wanted it. He then worked the count, got ahead, was in a 2-strike spot, and then elevated the fastball and went from down at the knees to up at the letters, basically on the same vertical plane, but on a different horizontal plane. And there was a lefty hitter, stood no chance. I mean, no chance whatsoever in the at-bat. And it was almost like you knew the fastball was coming. Again, 50% of his pitches last night were 4-seam fastballs. You knew you had a 1 in 2 chance. Well, not a 1 in 2 chance because he throws 5 other pitches. But in terms of pitch percentage, you basically had a pretty 50-50 chance of guessing fastball or not. And he still was excellent. 9 strikeouts. He gives up the 2-run home run. But 9 strikeouts yesterday, scattered just 4 hits. His whip continues to climb in the right direction game after game after game. His whip is now sub 1, as it almost feels like it is every year. He's at .94. He's 3-1. Again, 66 strikeouts in 51 innings pitched. And the funny thing is his expected ERA, those underlying metrics, are actually better than what his real numbers are. He's got a 3.3 ERA, and he's expected to be at a 2.3. He's giving up, his whip is .94, and batters are expected to hit about 199 against him. He's in the 87th percentile or better in whiff rate, K rate, walk rate. I mean, I can't say enough good things about this guy. Like, he is an ace. There is no question about it. And I think we're to the point now where over the last, let's say 4 or 5 seasons, there is an argument to be made that Zack Wheeler is the best starting pitcher in all of baseball. Because Garrett Cole was probably the guy for a while. Injuries have derailed him over the last couple of seasons. Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom were those dudes in the earlier portions of the 2020s and even more like the teens. Those guys have started to falter a little bit as injuries have mounted up. Zack Wheeler over the last 5 years since joining the Phillies may be the best starting pitcher in all of baseball. Like, to me, if you ask me, who are the 5 best starters in baseball since Zack Wheeler joined the Phillies, I would go Zack Wheeler. I would go Garrett Cole. Logan Webb has been quietly one of the best starters in all of baseball. Corbin Burns is probably in that conversation. And then you can pick the last guy who you want it to be. There's a handful of guys that are probably deserving, but do they have the 5-year sample size that Zack Wheeler has? And quite frankly, I don't know the answer to that question because he's been that good. K-Red, so the difference between a 4-seam and a 2-seam, because we'll end the conversation here. It depends on how you throw it. Different guys throw it different ways, but the bulk of stuff, I wish I had a ball here. I have one somewhere in my room, but I don't have one in front of me. 4-seam usually goes against the laces. And so what you're trying to do, and I'll try to show you with my hands, right? So you've got a ball, right? And so you go against the laces, and what you're trying to do is pull it down. And when you pull it down, you get reverse spin. And that's when you start to hear people talk about like defying gravity, right? Looks like a rising fastball because you can't rise, right? It's just gravity's going to pull the ball down. But it's the battle against that gravity, which gives that 4-seam that look of it rising through the zone. Zack Wheeler, especially since he dropped his arm slot over the last couple of years, and again, I'm going to try to do this on the fly, but Zack Wheeler over the last couple of years has had his arm slot come down from 38 degrees in 2020 to 25 degrees each of the last 2 seasons. And so when he drops the arm slot and has that upward run on his fastball, it basically defies gravity a little bit and holds form, and that's why it looks like it's rising. Now, the 2-seam, you're going to go with the laces. Now, guys throw it a million different ways. You know, both laces on, one lace off, one off to the side, the other way. So I'm left-handed, right? So, and I never threw a 4-seam because I didn't throw hard. I was a junk baller who needed as much movement as possible. So my fastball was a 2-seam fastball. And so what I would hold it against the laces with, you could hold it with the horseshoe facing up or the horseshoe facing down, but I used to hold it with the horseshoe facing up, and there was a little bit of an offset grip where my pointer finger was off to the right side of the seam a little bit, and it helped me snap it down. And you don't want pronation, but you want a little bit of turnover so that you can get it to do that arm side run. So a lefty's going to have it run back from right to left. A righty's going to have it run back from left to right. So when you see Aaron Nola's two seam, that's why it runs left to right, because he has that snap. So I guess his would be his right pointer finger and snaps it, and the ball goes this way. So a lefty's would go this way. Sorry to dive down that rabbit hole. I love the breakdown of pitching. I think pitching is like the most beautiful thing in sports to me. It's such a science, and there's so many different factors to it. And it really is physics. Pitching is physics. And it's such a cool combination of sport and physics and science. Like I just love that kind of stuff. So sorry to go off on the tangent there, but that's the difference for you between the two seam and the four seam. And there's a million different ways to grip the baseball, to hold the ball. How do you do it with the seams versus against the seams? And I could tell you one thing and it worked for me, but it might not work for you. Like, for example, and sorry, we'll get back to actual conversation in just a second. But for example, when I was growing up learning how to pitch, my dad used to teach me a slider grip, and I couldn't get it down. I just couldn't get the grip and the football frisbee from your ear type of slot to make the slider work. Meanwhile, my curveball was pretty good. I threw a pretty good curveball. It was a slow, fall through the zone, tumbly type of curveball. And I could throw that pitch all day. Meanwhile, my dad, who tried to teach me the slider, who threw it pretty successfully, and it was, he used to throw it to me in BP just to like see what a slider looked like, had no ability to throw a curveball, couldn't get the snap down. And so it just had like a loopy humpback feel to it. And it's so funny to see what guys are good at and what they're not. And it's just the difference in grip, difference in like, are you pronating enough? Are you not pronating enough or too much? It's such a crazy dynamic. But yeah, I could do this all day. I love talking pitching, but we have a lot to do, including a lot of our sponsors still to talk to. I apologize to Bree, who's producing today's show, because I am way late to all of our sponsorship. But let's pause for just a moment and tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. All right. Bet365, our presenting sponsor of today's show. As always, our presenting sponsor, Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And it's why over 90 million users worldwide use Bet365. And they are the pioneers of live in-game betting. They live stream 780,000 events each and every year. And you can in-game live bet on over 70 different sports. So it's not just your big four in the US or soccer across the world. You can live bet everything. And that's why they are the pioneers of live in-game betting, because the lines change all the time. You might have a game where last night, for example, Phillies, your hometown team was up 3-2, busted it open in the eighth inning, win pretty comfortably. You would have gotten much better odds in the seventh than you did in the eighth, and you can live in-game bet all the time. And breaking news from our friends over at Bet365, new users can get up to $150 back in bonus bets when they sign up and bet just $5, win or lose. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to sign up for a new account, use the code PHLY365, deposit just $10, and place a $5 bet to get $150 back in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. Those bonus bet money can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, whatever. It doesn't matter, because whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's talk about the flooring experts. Empire Today. When you need the job done right, you want to get to the pros. And I can't recommend Empire enough if you're thinking about putting in new flooring, whether it is tile, hardwood, carpet, whatever the case may be. Empire Today is going to be with you every single step of the way. Listen, you've been to the big box stores before. They do an okay job, but you may be dealing with somebody who is working in at the front desk, last week, or they were in outdoor the week before. With Empire Today, you're going to work with somebody who is a flooring expert, because that's all they do at Empire Today is floors. And sometimes you just want the home field advantage. And in this case, you want the home flooring advantage. Empire is going to make it right to you, bring the flooring basically right to your front door. So what they're going to do is bring their showroom to you by picking out the right flooring, showing you the right colors for your space. And you're going to be able to see exactly how your flooring looks with your furniture in your house. They'll give you precise measurements and answer all of your questions, so there are no surprises. And speaking about surprises, Empire today has clear upfront and all-inclusive pricing, so you don't have to worry about those hidden fees or last-minute transactions springing up on you at the last minute. So schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. PHLY listeners can receive $350 discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. Visit Empire today/PHLY for full details. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast, presented to us by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And it is time for our Ace Hardware temperature check, as we check in on who with the Phillies is either heating up or cooling down. Of course, brought to us by our friends over at Ace Hardware Home Services. All right, today's Ace Hardware temp check, maybe a little bit of a surprising one, because I could talk about how Max Kepler has been better as of late. I could talk about Aaron Nola, who's put together 2 consecutive starts. But I wanted to go a little bit off the grid today and talk to you about a reliever who has been really, really good over the last couple of outings. And how about we give the Ace Hardware temp check to a heating up Tanner Banks? Yes, the unheralded, unsung lefty of the Phillies bullpen has quietly put together a really good start to the year. He's given up just 5 earned runs. He has a 2.93 ERA through his first 15 and a third innings pitched. And if you think about it, he gave up 2 earned runs in a game against the Giants back in mid-April. So aside from that kind of rough outing, he's given up 3 earned runs over 13 and a third innings, which is good for a 2.02 ERA. He's got a sub-1 whip. He has struck out 18 over his first 15 and a third innings pitched, and he's on a career-high pace for both strikeouts per 9 at 10.6 and walks per 9 at 2.3. He's in the 73rd percentile in terms of walk percentage across Major League Baseball. He's only issued 4 walks in his first 15 and a third innings pitched. And the one thing that I think he's doing an excellent job at is throwing first pitch strikes. He does not have a great track record over his career at throwing first pitch strikes. This year, he's up to over 68% first pitch strikes, and he's in the zone more than he's ever been in his career at about 54%. He's not giving up hard hit contact either. He's in the 77th percentile in exit velocity percentile across all of Major League Baseball. So how has Tanner Banks been better this year? Well, I think in part he's been better because he's gone to a much heavier breaking ball overlay. He's always been pretty slider dominant from the left-hand side, but 58% of his pitches this year have either been a slider or a sweeper. So he's going heavy breaking ball. And the one thing I've noted with Tanner Banks, and we noticed it too we talked about this a lot with Jesus Luzardo, with his addition of the sweeper and adding it to the slider. Tanner Banks has gone sweeper slider heavy, and he's using them in different ways. So he's using the slider dominantly against right-handed hitters, and he's using the sweeper more against left-handed hitters. So let's talk about the slider for just a second. Opponents are hitting just 167 off of the slider, and they're slugging 278. He has 5 strikeouts on 84 sliders this year. Last year, he only had 15 strikeouts on the slider all year, and he threw it over 380 times. So he's a third of the way there on less than a quarter of the pitches that he's thrown with that same pitch. His numbers are much better this year on the slider than they were a season ago. He's also using the sweeper, and he's using that more as like a traditional same-side runaway breaking ball as a against left-handed hitters as a lefty-lefty matchup. And not only is he using it more as a traditional same-side pitch, but he's actually getting more run on it this year. So last year, he had 13 inches of horizontal run towards JT Realmuto's glove side. This year, he's up to 13.7. Now, it doesn't seem like it's much. It's 0.4, 0.5 inches of difference, but it can make a huge difference in that rotational spin. And, you know, the difference between it running from the heart of the plate to the edge of the plate versus the heart of the plate off of the plate, or burning it off the outer edge and running it away from those left-handed hitters. And that's where you get that kind of flailing, swinging attempt. So I think Tanner Banks has done a really nice job out of the bullpen so far. Maybe a little bit unsung, a little bit unheralded, if you will, but Tanner Banks has done an excellent job for the Phillies out of the bullpen. This has been a bullpen that's not very deep, right? We've talked about Carlos Hernandez struggling. We've talked about Jose Ruiz was struggling before he went on the IL, but we do have to give credit to guys like Tanner Banks, who have been much better as of late, and Joe Ross, who's been kind of the everything guy for this bullpen. Need multiple innings, you go to Joe Ross. You need mop-up duty, you go to Joe Ross. You turn to Joe Ross in the 6th and the 7th in a game you're down 1, and he holds the lead. So those two guys I have to give a lot of credit for. But our Ace Hardware temperature check today, presented, of course, by our friends at Ace Hardware Home Services, is going to feature Tanner Banks. So I wanted to shout Tanner Banks out today in that Ace Hardware temperature check. All right, one final segment before we get out of here today, but we do have to pause just one more time and tell you about some more of our friends right here at PHLY. All right, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for that next career step, or if you're a business owner and you need to hire the right candidate, look no further than LinkedIn and LinkedIn Jobs. If you're a small business owner, you just don't have the luxury of clocking out. You are on your business trajectory 24/7. So when you're hiring, you need to worry about have a partner and work with a partner that's going to grind just as hard as you do. And that's where the hiring partners at LinkedIn Jobs come in. So when you do clock out and you spend some time with your family or whatever you may do, LinkedIn clocks in. They make it easy for you to post your jobs for free. You can share it with your network, and you're going to get qualified candidates that you can manage all in one place. Now, I'm not a small business owner, but I have to imagine the stresses of finding the right candidate. You get a million different applications, and sometimes the candidate just doesn't link up, and you want the easiest solution, but also finding the best candidate for your job. So they're going to feature the best feature for LinkedIn is their new feature that helps you write your job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people with the best candidate insight possible. So you can either post your job for free, or you can pay to promote it, and promoted jobs get 3 times more qualified candidates. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing for you and your business is the quality of the candidate. And with LinkedIn, you can feel confident that you are getting the best candidate possible. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/Phillies. That's linkedin.com/Phillies to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Ashley. Ashley is has sprung into the savings portion of the season, and now they are giving you the opportunity to shop their Memorial Day sales event as well at Ashley. And it's going on not just now, not just for Memorial Day. It's going on for the bulk of May. You can save $100 off of every $1,000 you spend. You're going to continue to get amazing savings on outdoor furniture. And the best part is 60 months special financing. And of course, you can always have your furniture delivered to you locally for free. But how about this? If you're not sold on $100 off $1,000 or incredible savings or special financing, how about with a qualified purchase, you're also going to get a free gift. I don't know what the gift is. You don't know what the gift is. Could be the mystery box. But that's the beauty of this. You're also going to walk away with a free gift. So save on top brand mattresses and get local delivery for free. They'll also help you with setup and removal of your old furniture as well at Ashley, South Jersey, and Philadelphia. Visit ashleyfurniture.com for more info. Of course, financing with approved credit. Minimum purchase is required. Some exclusions do apply. See store for details. Excuse me. Had to take a drink for just a moment. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Once again, hello to everybody in the chat. A couple new names and faces. Player 1 in the Mad Cats, welcome to you as well. Just one more thing before we get out of here today. George, welcome back. So, George, I hope your trip to Philly was awesome. George was traveling to Philly from the UK, and I believe, George, if I remember correctly, you were going to Citizens Bank Park for the first time in your life. Lifetime Phillies fan from the UK, and says had the best time. Thanks, Philly. Well, hope you had an incredible time in our city. I'm glad you made it back to your hometown safely, and I am glad that the Phillies performed well while you were here. Mopar, to answer your question, Bob will be on with us each and every Monday at 1:30. So he is scheduled 1:30 every Monday from here on out. And we'll chat with him pretty much consistently on a weekly basis. Jim Salisbury, of course, joins us most Wednesdays. Didn't get a chance to link up with him today. I was just a little bit busy, but he joins us most Wednesdays. And then Friday, I am working on a guest who covers the Cleveland Guardians. So hopefully we'll have that opportunity to chat with them on Friday. All right, one final thing before we get out of here today, and that is a post that I saw from our friend at Phillies Tailgate just a couple of days ago. And the post basically read that the Phillies are now the only team this season to not have a player make their major league debut for the team. And I thought that was interesting because that means that 29 teams have had a player make their major league debut in the first 35 games of the season. And you can take that one of two ways. The first way you can take that is that the Phillies are set up well and they don't necessarily need the help. I think that that's probably the wrong way to look at it. But if you're interested in looking at it from a glass half full standpoint, that may be the way to look at it. They've got a lineup that's pretty consistent. They've got a starting rotation that is excellent. And that, I think, is where a lot of the players come from, right? So if you're thinking about how many teams had a player make their debut as a pitcher, or how many of those players made their debut as a pitcher, I assure you it's upwards of 50 of them. It's a lot of guys. And it's strewn across the entirety of the league. Now, it's guys that made their major league debut and had a cup of coffee. It's guys that have been in the big leagues for a majority of the season, right? We talked about the White Sox. Shane Smith leads the way with a 1.2 WAR of the whole group. Tomoyuki Sugano for the Baltimore Orioles has a 1. A lot of these guys have been with their major league team for a while now. A guy that we've seen this series, Jake Mangum, has been with the Tampa Bay Rays. We saw last series with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Tim Tawa was with us. We've seen for a majority of the season now, was with the Diamondbacks for a majority of the season. So the Phillies are the last team to bring up a player and make his major league debut. The other way that you could look at it is that the Phillies have done this pretty consistently over their tenure. Over the last 25 years or so, they slow play a lot of their prospects. For better or for worse, that's what they do. So it made me think, who is the first guy that is going to make his major league debut this season for the Phillies? Because I went back and I looked at it in 2024, and I wanted to know who was the first Phillies player to make their major league debut for the team last year. And the Phillies had 4 players make their major league debut. And the first one to do it was Michael Mercado. Michael Mercado made his major league debut last year on June 24th and pitched a handful of games, posted a minus 0.7 WAR. Then following that up was Tyler Phillips on July 7th, Max Lazar on August 10th, and Seth Johnson was the last guy to make his major league debut. And Seth Johnson's a guy who I think is going to be on the major league roster at some point this year. As they transition him from a starter to a bullpen role, which they're doing in Lehigh Valley right now, I think Seth Johnson's going to play an important role for the Phillies come the summer months. But they had 4 guys make their major league debut last year. So it made me think about who's going to be the first guy to do it. I think there's probably one of 2 players this year. I think the obvious answer is Otto Kemp. Otto Kemp, who continues to tear the cover off the baseball in AAA. His numbers are just off the charts good through the first month plus of the season, and does play in part to the fact that he is a multiple position guy who can play a little third, can play a little outfield, can do a little bit of everything. And I think he's been hitting the ball, obviously, exceptionally well. 330 average. And this was, by the way, 2 days ago. I haven't checked since this stat was put up by the Pigs. 330 average, which is 7th in the International League. 8 home runs, tied for first. 24 RBIs, second. 32 hits, tied for second. 23 runs, first. A 7.11 slug, first. And a 1.1 OPS, second. And not surprisingly, he was named the International Player of the Month for the month of April. Otto Kemp feels like it's going to be the guy. The question is, where does Otto Kemp play when he makes his debut? Because I think the Phillies are looking at this as we'd rather the guy get every day at bats versus being a bench piece or a platoon piece. Right move or wrong move, I think that's what they're thinking about. I don't know where the at-bats come from. Maybe it's a day at third, it's a day in left, it's a day wherever. So the Phillies, obviously, platoon player right now is Weston Wilson, who mashes left-handed pitching. I think at this point, Otto Kemp is forcing the Phillies' hand. And to that regard, I think he is going to be the first guy up whenever this happens. And before we continue this conversation, I do want to just pause for a moment. as we are officially in our overtime period. Thank you, Bree. Appreciate you producing today's show. We are in our overtime session. Who is going to be that guy? I think it's probably Otto Kemp is going to be the answer to that question. The other one, because it's not going to be Andrew Painter, I don't think. I think somebody is going to be up before Andrew Painter. I still believe Andrew Painter is going to be closer to late June, early July. They're going to give him as much run and as much leeway as they possibly can in AAA before he makes his major league debut. I think somebody is going to be up before that. So the other guy that I think it probably could be, and it's a guy that I will admit to you, I gave up on. I gave up on this guy a couple of years ago, and he has been having probably his best statistical season to this point. And I think the reason being is because he's done a much better job of commanding the strike zone, is Mick Abel. And Mick Abel's now down to a 2.7 ERA in Lehigh Valley. He's made 7 appearances, 7 starts. He's gone almost 40 innings in those 7 starts. He's striking out more than a batter per inning, and the whip has come down. His career whip is 1.42. He's now down to a 1.3. He still has a bit of a walk issue. He's issued 17 walks in 39 innings, which is substantially better than the 78 over 108 that he issued last year. And in 2023, the 65 that he gave up over 113. He's given up 34 hits, which, it's a decent amount of hits over 39 innings pitched, but that number's come down compared to the 119 that he allowed in Lehigh Valley last year. His ERA is down from a 6.4 to a 2.7. Now, where does Mick Abel slide into this equation? Because I think the answer is he's going to go into the bullpen. I think the Phillies are saving that last rotation spot when they make it a 6-man for Andrew Painter. The Phillies currently have Ranger Suarez. They currently have Taijuan Walker. I think Mick Abel, when he makes his debut, will be either as a spot starter, which may happen, or more realistically, as a bullpen guy for this season. He's been excellent as a starter this year. Again, he's averaging a little over somewhere between 5 and 6 innings a start, which is, stretching in the right direction. And he's been really, really good. And his strikeout numbers continue to stay at a good level. I have to give this kid a lot of credit. I gave up on him. I did. I gave up on him probably 2 years ago, which wasn't fair considering the fact that 2 years ago he was 21 years old. And I may have sounded the alarm too early. And then last year he was really just had a rough year in AAA numerically. But I think this year he's bounced back in a really positive way. And I think you have to keep in mind, he's still only 23 years old. We've been talking about Mick Abel for 5 years now. And when we were talking about him in AAA and talking about the guy who struck out 66 over 44, that was a 19-year-old kid. And he's starting to mature. He's starting to understand what it takes to be a professional. He is a former first-round pick, right? And so I think Mick Abel might be the other answer. The wild card I would throw into this, because he's been a professional for so long, and maybe this is a little bit of a different answer. The wild card I would throw into all of this is Koyo Aoyagi. He's pitching in AAA right now. They signed him out of the Japanese league this offseason. Did not make the team out of camp, but has been pretty good in AAA so far this year. So throughout his first 15 appearances or whatever it's been, 10 appearances. He's 31 years old. He's not young, right? But he was pitching in Japan for quite some time. And the book on Koyo Aoyagi was in 2021 and 2022, he posted 2.7 and 2.5 ERAs. He was really, really good. 13-6 and 13-4 in his appearances in the in Japan. And then in 2023, he had a 4 ERA, bounced back a little bit in 2024, but was at one point in 2023 demoted to the Japanese minor leagues. Doesn't throw particularly hard, keeps the ball on the ground, funky delivery. Aoyagi, it would be the wild card that I would throw into that mix. So I think the likeliest scenario is probably Otto Kemp, followed by Mick Abel, and then Aoyagi might be the one that could be up somewhat quickly. All right, big thank you to everybody who joined the chat today. George, I'm glad you're safe and back in the UK. I'm glad you had a great time. K-Red, Elephant in the Room, Filthy, Player One in the Mad Cats, Ray Schumacher. Who else do we got? Pat Ryan earlier today, Mopar, Philly sports enjoyer, everybody. It was a lively chat today. You guys are the absolute best. Can't thank you enough. And of course, a big thank you to Bree for producing today's show. Head on over. The Eagles are live now. I'm not sure if they broke the news just yet. Again, not my news to tell, but head on over. They may have some important information for you in the coming moments or throughout the show. Eagles at 2, Sixers at 3, and that will wrap up our festivities for this Wednesday afternoon. We'll be back live on Friday at 1 o'clock once again. Same time. We'll go for an hour. We'll have more conversations. We'll wrap up this Rays series and look ahead to the Cleveland Guardians series coming up this weekend. So again, big thank you to you in the chat. Big thank you to Bree. I'm Tyler Zulli saying so long for now. We'll talk to you at Friday at 1 o'clock right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.